Hi, everyone. Landry Etheridge here, joined today by Dr. Etta Gantt, also from Etheridge Counseling. We're here to talk about communication. I'm so excited to dive into this sort of new way of understanding and viewing communication styles and communication skills, all based around three zones. So, Etta, thank you so much for being here and talking to us about communication. Can you explain to us just an overview of what are these three zones of communication?
I feel like a lot of people are probably familiar with the terms like passive aggressive, passive and aggressive, and everyone's told like those are bad. But there's not much insight into what the alternative is, which typically the alternative is being assertive. Um, but there's a lack of clarity on what that really means. So I wanted to really describe like the counterpart to each of these three zones: passive communication, the counterpart being active listening; passive aggressive communication, the counterpart being more like collaborative or problem solving, like, okay, there's an issue here, let's work together to see what it is, versus like those passive comments like under your breath where you're trying to get something across, but they never really land because no one knows what you're trying to really say. And then aggressive versus assertive boundary setting. So aggressive looks more like, being hostile, letting your anger out, kind of more threatening or ultimatum type boundary setting, versus like assertive is like clear, grounded. No, I'm not going to be able to make that done, right? And so I just wanted to provide counterparts to each of these zones. So the zone of listening and receiving, the zone of both listening and directing, and then the directed zone. Um,
I think this way of looking at communication sort of simplifies it. It's really clear you're either in one of the three zones and you can it sounds like kind of move in between those at different times.
yeah,
Is
I think like the ideal communicator would be able to seamlessly like move across all three zones when the right situation fit and feels comfortable in each zone. I think that's probably a little bit unrealistic. Most of us feel more comfortable in one zone than the other, but that just tells us like which area needs to strengthen. Maybe we need to work on our listening skills, or maybe we need to work on how we speak our truth or set our boundaries.
I love it. What inspired you to write this article? Is it something that you're seeing like a big need for, or I don't know,
Yeah,
kind of brought
that's
this?
a great question. We've actually never talked about this, but I just one time, like a year or two ago, when I was with a client, was like thinking about all this while they were talking, and I just wrote it up on the whiteboard, like in a little chart. Like, okay, here's passive aggressive, here's aggressive. What are the opposite? Like, how can we like? What are the healthy counters to this? And so I made a little chart that I use like all the time with clients when they're discussing like, usually it centers around like a work issue, like how they're communicating something around work, but it's also relationships, like social, family, or romantic. And I've started just like putting this chart up on the board, and everyone's like, oh yeah, that's me. And I don't even have to be like, yeah, you might be leaning towards passive aggressive. They're like, oh yeah, that's definitely me, because it just lands. And they're like, yeah, I need to work on that side.
Oh my goodness. Um, can you share an example of what it might look like to shift between zones in like a real conversation? Like, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm. So let's say I'm just coming up with this right now. You're talking to a friend, and you notice like y'all are just kind of chatting, doing the back and forth, and then you notice like maybe like a little like pause or like tickle in their throat when they're talking about an issue that is like sensitive to them. That would be a good time to shift into maybe some like active listening. Like maybe you're just kind of doing a back and forth, you're in the middle, like and you might realize, okay, this person, they need some attention here, but you don't know how to do that necessarily. You know that it's something they might want to talk about. So shifting into active listening, using a lot of like nodding, eye contact, encouragers, gentle inquiry, as I say, asking open-ended questions, even saying, tell me more about that. That sounds really hard, things like that. That would be being really intentional to shift into that zone, to let them share and giving them the space that they need.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So kind of really staying attuned to what's happening in
Mhm.
the conversation and knowing when it could be helpful to move from one into the other. And maybe even
Mhm.
asking for feedback of, is this
Yeah.
what I love it. All right. Well, I'm really excited about this series of blogs that Etta has written on communication. This is sort of our overview, but she's actually going to go into, in the next three videos, go into more specifically each one. So that receiving zone, the mixed zone, and then the directing zone. So if you're interested in that, check out those videos, or head over to LandryEtheridge.com to read her actual blog post and see the actual diagrams, which would be really helpful. So or if you're interested in working with Etta and kind of building some of those communication skills, if you're wanting to improve your relationships, your friendships, your working relationships, really important to meet with a therapist who knows what they're doing, knows what they're talking about, and can help you kind of work through those and build those skills. So thanks so much, Etta. And we'll jump into the next one.
Thank you.